Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another exciting RiverRun Retro. I'm Rob Davis, Director of the RiverRun International Film Festival, and we're just so excited to have all of you with us tonight and to welcome a very, very special guest. I just want to start things off by thanking some of our sponsors. The title sponsors for our 2020 RiverRun International Film Festival and their programs for 2020 are the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, our home tonight, the Arts Council of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County, Wake Forest University, and Reynolds American. So a special thank you to the title sponsors of the RiverRun International Film Festival. Yes, please, a round of applause. The sponsors of RiverRun Retro I want to acknowledge specifically. First of all, the Retro series is sponsored by Nelson Mullins, and we are so grateful to them for their continued support of this year-round program. Denise Gunter from Nelson Mullins, who's also on our board of directors, is here tonight, so a special thank you to Nelson Mullins. And this particular retro has additional sponsorship provided by American Airlines and also by McNeely Pest Control. Now, I don't know if they exterminate aliens, but probably if they were called upon, they'd give it a go. So we're thankful to McNeely, and then also our hospitality sponsors, the Kempton Cardinal Hotel, McRitchie Winery, Foothills Brewing, and all of our sponsors. We're just very, very grateful to them for helping to make Retro possible. I do want to mention 11 weeks from tonight, we will be in the midst of the 22nd RiverRun International Film Festival. Yes, absolutely. You know, the team and I, when we're gathering together and planning the festival, we're always excited about it, and we always think that each festival has some very unique attributes. And sometimes when we finish, we say, wow, it's going to be difficult to top that one. And that was the case last year. You know, we set a record last year for the 11 days. That was the biggest RiverRun ever because we showed 175 films from 47 countries with 124 filmmakers from as far away as Kenya here in Winston-Salem. And when we finished that festival, we sat down, we talked about the films, we talked about the audiences, we talked about the filmmakers, and we said, wow, it's going to be tough to top that one. Well, what happened is, this year we put out our call for entries, like we always do, and last year we had about 1,700 films submitted. Well, our final deadline for submissions was December 1st, and I can tell you, again, we have now set a new record in terms of films submitted to RiverRun. We've had 2,100 films submitted for the 2020 festival. So we're so thrilled that so many filmmakers want to come to RiverRun, want to come to Winston-Salem, and want to meet with you, our audiences. So we're pulling together a phenomenal festival every day right now. We're accepting more and more films, and I can tell you of the new films, we've got some fantastic narratives and also some fantastic documentaries. And I think all of you here tonight possibly have an interest in some of the classic films. And you know we always do an archival spotlight as part of the festival. And so I can tell you this year, our archival spotlight features films with screenplays by Rod Serling of Twilight Zone fame. And you know, he wrote some very interesting films. And we're thrilled that his daughter, Ann Serling, is coming to the festival to introduce some of these along with some other special guests. And then the last film I'll mention, again, we've had such a great response to the film noir films that we've shown over the years that literally 11 weeks from tonight, we have a film played. It's called Shadow on the Wall. It's from 1950. Warner Brothers is letting us have their only existing 35mm print of the film, so we're thrilled to be showing that. And in the film, a young girl witnesses the murder of her stepmother, but she goes into a state of shock and amnesia so that she knows that she witnessed a murder, but she can't identify the killer, and it's up to her psychiatrist, played by none other than Nancy Reagan, to pull her out of her amnesia state and solve this crime. Well, the young girl who played the young girl in the film was a huge child star in the 1940s, the 1950s, and then as a teenager into the 1960s before she began teaching drama. Her name is Gigi Peru, and she's going to be with us to introduce that film and talk about it. So that's 11 weeks from tonight. Anyway, March 26th to April 5th, look forward to having all of you with us then. On to tonight's program. We are so thrilled to have a couple of great special guests to introduce this film and talk about it. Dale Pollock is the only recipient of RiverRun's Visionary Award because it was his vision a number of years ago that brought this film festival from Brevard, North Carolina to Winston-Salem. And as many of you know, Dale had a very distinguished career as a Hollywood producer before entering into higher education and becoming Dean of the School of Filmmaking at the University of North Carolina, where he still teaches. And we are so fortunate at RiverRun because he's still on our board of directors, so we get to benefit from his wisdom and guidance every single day. So Dale will be with us tonight, and he'll be interviewing our very special guest, one of the stars of tonight's film. When I think about the career of Veronica Cartwright, it's so amazing because she started working before she was 10 years old. Some of her early film work was for directors like William Wyler in The Children's Hour, Alfred Hitchcock in The Birds, and then her career continued with tonight's film, films such as Alien, The Witches of Eastwick, and many, many others. On television, she began her career in distinguished roles. She's in one of the most famous episodes of The Twilight Zone. She was a semi-regular on Leave It to Beaver, giving Beaver Cleaver his first kiss. Her career continued all the way through the decades to now, and she has made the transition not just in performing, but adapting to all of the new technologies. We were talking a few minutes ago. She's made one of the first virtual reality films. She's in a series on Netflix, The Sabrina Chronicles, that she'll likely be returning to, and she's in a series right now streaming on Amazon. So she has traveled the whole history, really, of film and television from the late 1950s forward. So please join me in giving a huge RiverRun Retro welcome to our very special guests, Dale Pollock and Veronica Cartwright.
Thank you. It's so great to see a crowd like this. I said to Veronica on our way in, I said, "You're a draw." And it's pretty self-evident. Rob just gave this wonderful introduction. I'm not going to repeat it, but your career has been amazing. More than 60 years. And you made, I think in today's industry, durability is a much admired trait. And you have survived technological changes. And also, if you would just talk, you started out as a child actress. And I know your father was in the film business.
Well, he actually ended up, we emigrated from England to Toronto and then drove cross country. And I was 6.5, and we ended up in El Segundo, California. And my father was a technical artist. So weirdly enough, my sister and I got into modeling before my dad got into the business. I mean, we had no connection. My mother just wanted to meet people, and the landlady suggested that she talk to Mrs. Robinson. And her daughter was in modeling and commercials and things like that. And my mother did. And the first interview that we ever went on, they were like cattle calls. I mean, everybody under the sun was there. And my sister got her first job at 3.5. And she had dark hair and dark eyes, and I was blonde and braids and blue eyes and thousands of freckles. So I looked totally all-American. Did Kellogg's commercials and Leave It to Beaver. Actually, my first theatrical thing was 1957, and it was Zane Grey Theater. And Barbara Stanwyck was the guest. Whoa. And she got shot. And they used Hershey's syrup for the blood. Because it was black and white, nobody could tell. And
Nice viscosity.
I just thought the consistency was correct. And I just thought that was absolutely fascinating. I mean, it was so interesting because it was sort of totally accidental. And I've been very fortunate to get a lot of interesting jobs.
Two of your credits really stand out from that period. The Children's Hour, which was an attempt to deal with lesbianism on the big screen, however halting and disguised it was. It was a controversial film at the time.
Oh, it was very controversial. I mean, as a matter of fact, it was, I tested for Mary, I tested for several different parts, different students in the piece. And those are the days when they used to do screen tests on film with actors, and you were given a whole scenes to do. Well, my first scene that I had to do was as Mary, going to visit the grandmother to tell her about the lie. So here I am, I'm in the middle of the scene, and then I hear this huge bang. And I thought to myself, well, I didn't know it was during the war, but okay. And I just kept going. Well, William Wyler had the prop department shoot a gun off in the middle of the scene to see what your attention span was. And I think ultimately that's what got me the job. Because I just kept going, and for some, I guess it was instinctual, I just justified why that noise was there. I guess other kids had panicked and turned around, and no, I just kept going, so. And I didn't get married, but I got the part of Rosalie, and Shirley MacLaine actually was an enormous influence on me.
In what sense?
Well, we weren't supposed to be around Shirley because she has bad language. But I was 11, and they had taken me to a section where I had to sit for my costume check. And Shirley was standing on, up on a platform, and she was laughing and talking to the crew and making fun, and she was just, I thought to myself, wow, this is what it's supposed to be. And she was turning around and she was doing her thing, and I thought, well, that's really incredible. Then I started to work, and Shirley was the one who came over to me. She would give me tips. She would tell me, don't cry when your face is in a couch, wait until the camera is on you. It was an honest conversation. And then I had the huge breakdown. Well, William Wyler, I mean, you did the scene, and then you did it again in rehearsal, and then it got into a higher pitch. And then he turned around to the cinematographer and says, okay, shoot it now. At which point I kind of totally flipped out. It was like, I don't know whether I was acting or what it was. It was just like a total hysteria.
But he saw that and was
Yes.
able to exploit it.
And Shirley was the one who came over and hugged me and said, that's so wonderful, dear. It happened to be the day that Lillian, oh God, she was the famous,
Lillian Gish?
no, she was the writer.
Lillian Hellman.
Lillian Hellman. No, not Lillian Hellman. Is she the one that wore the big hats and used to
Oh,
do the
Hedda.
reviews?
Hedda.
Hedda. Was it Hedda? I guess it was
Llewellyn
Hedda.
Parsons?
Llewellyn Parsons.
There we
Right.
go. We got there eventually.
That's fine. So Llewellyn Parsons happened to be on the set that day and wrote a wonderful 2-page review about the scene and how I had gotten there emotionally, and everything. It was really fantastic. But Shirley was the one who sort of took me under her wing and made sure I was in a dressing room so I could have some time to calm down, because I was hysterical. And my mom was 8.5 months pregnant at the time, and she was up in the dressing room. They said she would have had my brother then if she'd have seen me. But and then years later, I was doing a play, and it had originally been at the Mark Taper Forum. It was called The Hands of Its Enemy, with Richard Dreyfuss and Phyllis Fralick. And we had moved that play because it was such a success over to the brand new Doolittle, which was at that point, and it was on Hollywood and Vine.
Right.
And the Christmas parade was going on, and so we were off for that night. And so I saw that Shirley MacLaine was doing her one-woman show down on Wilshire Boulevard. So I took a chance and got some tickets and went down there. And afterwards, I went backstage and I said, would it be possible, are you on the list? I said, no, but I worked years ago with her, maybe she remembers me. The next thing I know, the guy comes out and says, Shirley wants to see you. I walked and she says to me, I have followed your career. And I thought, oh my God, and I said, and I had a dream. I had this dream of walking across this huge swimming pool in Las Vegas just to go over and tell her what an influence she had been. And what a weird coincidence. So.
Were there other influences like her?
Yes, actually, my mom had put us into these little classes, which were like Bill Lockwood and Frank Wyckoff. They did musical theater. Bill Lockwood did the musical part, and we do little dances and they put on plays. And then Frank Wyckoff, I would go and talk to him, and we'd discuss scenes. And like one of the scenes for the children's hour, we had gone over, so that you sort of knew what was going on. Well, once the movie was cast, and it came up that it was about lesbians, a lot of the parents pulled their children out of it.
I was going to ask what your mother.
My mother said to me, because we were raised Catholic, my mom says to me, well, this is just like Bill and Frank, but it's two women. I mean, Bill and Frank, we'd been to their house, we'd had lunch, this is just like Bill and Frank, only two women. It seemed perfectly normal to me. It wasn't like I really felt I was lying when I was saying I saw them kiss. It was fascinating. There's a brilliant poster that somebody discovered when they just did a documentary on the Children's Hour, which I'm part of. And there was a poster, and it was magenta, and it was their two faces facing each other. And at the top, it just says different. And that was a poster at the top. Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah, even that was controversial.
Yes, I think it was. It was very controversial. We weren't allowed to see it. We went to the premiere and we got to meet, Armie Hammer was, not Armie Archer was the MC. And we were all dressed up and they took us to the Brown Derby to have dinner because we weren't allowed to see the movie.
I want to talk to you about another one of your childhood performances, which was in The Birds. I got to know Melanie Griffith, and she told me a rather disturbing story about when her mother was working with Hitchcock, and he brought Melanie a small little coffin one day, and said,
and it was a wood box.
And she said there was a little corpse in there that he said was her.
Well, I don't know. I have heard a different story about that.
What was it like working with Hitchcock as a child?
Well, see, I didn't know any of the controversy that was going on between him and Tippy. I thought he was fantastic. He became so available to asking any questions. He was as nice to me. He never felt like, oh, I'm dealing with a child. I'd ask him questions like, the jungle gym that had all the birds on it. I said, well, there's so many fake birds on there. How are they going to tell when people see it that, it's really... He says, your eye sees movement and you assume that everything is alive. And to this day, you look at that movie, you can't see where the cardboard birds are or anything, because you do. You get so caught up into the whole experience of it that it's true. Your mind plays tricks. He liked to do things that you would form in your mind what was going on. Then when we do the scene where we leave, if you notice that there's a door that opens, and I said, but there's no door. But he goes, well, if there was a door there, I would be able to see you now, would I? So he says, Rod, let's show her how it's done. And so Rod Taylor reaches out and he mimes opening the door, and the shaft of light goes across her face, and you swear it's a door. And he said, you see, Veronica, that's the magic of movies. I would have tea every afternoon with him at 4 o'clock. And
would his wife join you for tea? Because I know she often did.
Not that I remember, but she could have. I think Alma was pretty much in the background. I mean, I met her, but it wasn't like she'd come to tea. He would have tea every afternoon at 4:30. They'd bring out his china cup and his china teapot. We'd sit and have biscuits together. I don't know, he was wonderful to me. And then the scene where all the birds come down the chimney, we were in a huge bubble. And the birds were put in a shaft. I believe there were like 15,000 birds they collected. They went around, it was terrible. They were going around snatching them out of street signs, and I don't think the ASPCA was aware what was going on.
And I don't think Hitchcock cared very much either.
But what was interesting about it, they put them in shafts all up the back of the chimney, and then they pull them out. And they would come out, and they would all go up, and then they would realize that there was a plastic ceiling, and so they dropped like stones. It was pretty weird, and we learned we had to shuffle, otherwise you'd step on a bird. It was kind of grotesque. And then they come out with brooms and shove them all back in and stick them back in the boxes, and it was quite disgusting. That's where I realized, just go moment to moment. I was just following Jessica Tandy, and I thought, oh my gosh, it was like, it was really an incredible experience. But that same day, it was my 13th birthday. And they threw an entire birthday party for me. And there are pictures that I look like I'm bawling my eyes out because I have been. Jessica Tandy gave me a sweater, and Tippy gave me a set of lovebirds, and then huge big cake, and all the cast and the crew were there. And then Hitchcock turns to Peggy Robinson, who is his assistant, and says, bring over the thing, a piece of white cardboard and a black crayon, and he wrote, to the woman I love, Veronica, and drew his face, and then signed it. And that was my my birthday present from him. So I really don't know. I've heard different varying stories. I know Timmy was quite perturbed.
Yes.
And I think it was just a German doll, and it happened to be in a wood box, from what I understand.
Okay. You did something that really very few performers can do. You made the transition from a child actor to an adult actor. And a lot of child actors never pull that off. For you, was it just sort of, you just kept getting older, being cast in older roles, and it was kind of effortless, or was there a point where you said, this is going to be hard?
Oh, I was a waitress a lot. It wasn't an easy transition. For one thing, I was on a series called Daniel Boone, and I was 17 when I was let go from that series, and I looked too young to be older and play older parts, and too old to play the younger parts anymore. So it was incredibly frustrating. I ended up getting married at 19, and I realized I wasn't getting any work. And my husband at the time, he was an actor, and he'd started studying with this man, Jack Garfine, who was part of the original group theater.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, this is something I would like to do. So I started going to classes at Jack Garfine's. In the meantime, I found out that he was sleeping with all the women that were in his class. So we ended up splitting up, but I stayed with Jack because I felt that I needed to define what it was. I was doing things naturally and instinctually, but I didn't.
You had never studied.
I never studied. So I felt that this was an important part in order to be able to make the transition. And after I studied with him for 3 years, I went and did, who was very method. It was a Stanislavski, thing, a method period. And then I went and studied for 6 months with Viola Spolin. I didn't have any work, so I packed my bags. I'm British, and I thought, well, I'll move to England. And I did. And first I went and did a backpacking trip, and then I just picked up my bags and I moved over there I said, I'll give it a year. And I moved over, and I remember an editor friend who I had met my first backpacking trip. He said, well, I'd have to run and pick up stuff. This was in Sloane Square. Do you want to come up and meet them? So all my luggage was stolen. They smashed the windows of the car. Why I had this, I had my American Express in my bra. It was a thing. You had to keep them on your personal stuff. And why I had my passport, I have no idea. It was in a plastic bag. But I survived. I slept on a couch, and I survived. And I ended up getting a movie at the end of the 10-month period. I was about ready to give up. And I got this movie Inserts with Richard Dreyfuss.
And then you ended up working in maybe the most exciting decade of American cinema.
Yes, I was.
And one of those filmmakers, of course, was Phil Kaufman. And you ended up doing, what, 3 films with him?
Yeah, I did 3 films with Phil. I did this one, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I did The Right Stuff with him. I played Betty Grissom. And then I did another movie with Ashley Judd called Twisted.
Right. And when you were putting together this film, did you and the rest of the cast look at this as a remake or a sequel?
Well, it was more like a continuation. I mean, the original one where they were walking around with big corn cobs, let's face it, that was a little extreme.
It was very low budget.
They shot it at Bronson Caves where I lived down the street. But they had, Kevin McCarthy makes an appearance in this.
And there are a lot of cameos in this.
Yes, you'll notice that Robert Duvall is the priest on the swing.
Right.
He doesn't have any lines or anything, he just looks like kind of sinister. Kevin McCarthy comes running through and says, "They're coming, they're
He's the
coming."
lead in the original.
In the original one.
And then I think Don Siegel, the director.
Yes, he plays a taxi cab driver.
Right? And Michael Chapman, the cinematographer.
Yes. You
He
said
did
he
it.
taught here, right?
He did. I'll never forget Michael Chapman bringing him in front of a class because he shot The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson.
Right.
And I said, well, what was it like working with Hal Ashby? And he said, fine. And that's all he said. So, you're a much better interviewer. But talk to me about, what did you think? Did everybody screen the original? We were all very aware of what was in it, and you sort of wanted to reinvent it for a different time?
No, I think we sort of viewed it as a continuation. I had seen the original. It was sort of a classic. It was sort of silly, but this was much more serious. And I think it had, it was interesting because I did an interview with somebody who said that he felt that this was sort of a climate change movie. And that had we dealt with that at the time? And no, we hadn't. I mean, or it was the birds as a climate change movie.
Right.
Oh, sorry, I'm mixing them up. But in a weird sort of way, this had when the week before we shot, and you'll see Donald Sutherland cutting out an article from the newspaper about these webs that shrouded San Francisco. Well, it's an actual article because just before we shot, there was this weird phenomenon where they were like webs floating out through the sky, hanging from the trees, and it was some sort of 100-year hatching of something. I mean, it was weird. It was totally weird. So that article is real that's being cut out. So it sort of added an eeriness to the webby sort of little plants that were growing that had tendrils, because they sort of look like little webs. So it was sort of, really was sort of an experience.
And I know Phil Kaufman has been he saw it as a political statement.
Yes.
About conformity and about the ability to speak out, and also what does it mean to be human.
Right. Well, it's like people that you would rather live in a pod state than commit to being, having loved or hated or anything like that. It just sort of is, I don't want to hear about it, let me just, go about my way and not commit to anything. So in that sense, it really was. But as you'll notice, I am the only character that realizes how you beat this.
I don't want to give any spoilers, but there is a twist ending on this film. And is it true that you were unaware of this until it
Until
played
the
in
end,
the
yeah.
scene?
Yeah, I mean, Phil and I walked around the block, and we talked about the scene, and I thought it was going to be something else, and it wasn't. But we shot it very much towards the end of the movie, so I was so committed, I think, to the character of Nancy Belichick, that
Right.
just happened. So that was one take, and that was it. So
And obviously they got the reaction they wanted because it was a shock to you.
yeah, it was a total shock. I did not expect him to do that at all. So I thought maybe I was the guy that would do that, but.
Any other special things to look out for that we could share with the audience that?
Well, this is interesting. Tom Berman, who later became a friend and I've worked with a lot, he does all the special effects in this. And what was interesting, see, these movies had no CGI. They were all actual things that were happening.
In camera.
In camera. So they actually had a midget, a gentleman that got into that suit, and he had a mask on his face, so he looks like Donald Sutherland. And so when he's coming out of the thing, it really looks like sort of the birth of this Donald Sutherland character. And then, of course, I bring him back to normality by breaking the process. But it was, he also did all of the work for Planet of the Apes. And they just come out with a documentary on the making of the masks and faces for Planet of the Apes, the original one, and which is all CGI now. And then the face of the dog that has the human face. These things are very creepy and very weird. And I had never been to a mud bath, and so Jeff hadn't either. So they suggested that we go to Dr. John's, which is a mud bath, and it's supposed to have a lot of healing qualities to it. It's kind of weird. They separate you, and you're in two separate male and female rooms, and you go in and you take your clothes off, and they would hose you down with a big hose, and then they put you on this big pallet, looks like a big pizza pallet, and they shove you into this mud. And this is supposed to have lava in it, and a lot of things that are supposed to be, special spring water. And they said, move around in it. Well, it's warm. And you start to move around in it, and then they start chucking this mud on top of you. It is really an experience. And then you start farting. The warmth and the heaviness of this lava mud that's on top of you. It's just the weirdest. You think, surely, did they change the mud every time? Is this really lava? It was just the weirdest. So then you come out, and then they blast you with a hose and get rid of all the mud. And then they wrap you up like a cocoon in this blanket. I mean, you feel like a mummy. Well, you're refreshed when you come out, but first
You must have felt like you were in a pod.
I did feel like I was in a pod. And I come out, and Jeff Goldblum's looking at me. His eyes are as big as saucers. And he goes, I don't know how sanitary that was. And then we had to go out and have dinner with the whole cast and crew. It was just I must say, you were energized and you glow. And maybe it was the lava. It was weird, totally weird, but it's an experience. So then they built our own mud baths.
Yes.
They built mud baths, and we knew what we were doing. We knew we had to be hosed down. We knew what to wear. I mean, it just was. It was a terrific experience. And then I did the right stuff with him too. So he's a wonderful man and a director.
I think an underrated American director.
Yes, and he wrote The Right Stuff. It was
Yes.
an adaptation, and I think he should have won that.
Well, I did a biography of George Lucas, and really the original idea for the Indiana Jones films originated with Bill
Bill
Kaufman.
Kaufman. Yeah.
Yes. So.
Fascinating.
So we could go on for a very long time, but we have some business to take
yes.
care of. So Rob,
Well, thank you both. Please, a round of applause for our special guests tonight. That was fantastic. Those of you who come to RiverRun events regularly know that we've had a number of guests with us over the years. The highest honor that the RiverRun International Film Festival bestows on any guest is our Master of Cinema Award for a legacy of career excellence. And we are so thrilled tonight. We do not present this award to every guest who comes to visit us, but we are thrilled tonight to be able to present it to Veronica. And before she gets her award and we watch our film, our good friend in Dallas, Texas, Gordon Smith, he has compiled what I think is just a brilliant short clip reel that highlights some of Veronica's work over the years. And I have to tell you, I've worked with Gordon on clip reels for probably 25 years all across the country. And when I told him we needed one for Veronica Cartwright, he got so excited. And so we started working on the reel, and he'd say, what scene from this, what scene from that, and we worked back and forth. And then once I thought we were finished, he kept going, and he kept going, and I said, now Gordon, we've got to stop this. This is going to be longer than the film. And he kept going, he said, but I just want to add this. And I'm like, now Gordon, we've got to stop it. So anyway, we finally came to a meeting of the minds, and I think you'll really enjoy this presentation and a look back at the career of Veronica Cartwright. So ma'am, when you're ready. As many of you know, RiverRun was founded in Brevard, North Carolina. We take our name from the French Broad River, which flows through that part of the state. And for our early history, and even after we came to Winston-Salem, themes of the river were used to market the festival. We still have the complete archives of all of these. And with our Master of Cinema Award, we go to a local glass blowing studio, the Oleo, and they handcraft a piece of glass because the inner tube with RiverRun on it was our symbol for the early part of our history. And so they crafted a glass inner tube on a piece of repurposed wood. That is our highest award we give. We pay tribute to our own legacy in paying tribute to the legacy of our special guests. So on behalf of the RiverRun Board of Directors and everyone associated with the festival, Veronica, it gives us great pleasure if you'll come up and receive our Master of Cinema Award.
This has just been a great experience. I've had really a lot of fun here, and you've been an incredible host, and I really like that montage. I cry a lot, don't I? I guess I'm really a good crier. It was great, and thank you so much. I've had a wonderful time and watched the film, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed doing it. So thank you.